Dubai, United Arab Emirates, January 19, 2010, 8:24 p.m. What Mahmoud al-Mabhouh doesn't know is that 4 men are waiting for him inside that room. What he doesn't know is that every step he's taken for the past 5 hours has been watched, tracked, and recorded. What he doesn't know is that he has less than 20 minutes to live. This is the story of the assassination that was too perfect to remain secret, the operation that exposed the invisible, the 26 operatives whose faces became the most wanted in the world, not because they failed, but because they succeeded, and the entire world was watching. To understand why Israel sent 26 operatives to kill 1 man requires understanding who Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was and how a car mechanic from a Gaza refugee camp became one of the most wanted terrorists in the Middle East. Born February 14, 1960 in the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh grew up in the aftermath of the 1948 Arab-Israeli war that had displaced his family from their home. The camp, designed as temporary shelter, had become permanent, overcrowded, impoverished, a breeding ground for resentment. His childhood was unremarkable. He trained as a car mechanic, owned a garage, pursued bodybuilding and weightlifting, developing the physique that would later help him in combat operations. He quit secondary school, started a family. By all appearances, he was just another Palestinian trying to survive under Israeli occupation. But in the 1970s, al-Mabhouh joined the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamic political organization that would eventually spawn Hamas. And in the 1980s, according to reports, he began his operational work, sabotaging coffee shops in Gaza where gambling took place. Small operations, testing his capabilities, learning the trade. In 1986, Israeli security forces arrested him for possession of an assault rifle. It was his first encounter with the Israeli prison system. They released him after a relatively short detention. It was a mistake they would come to regret. February 16, 1989, the Erez crossing between Gaza and Israel. 2 Israeli soldiers, Sergeant Avi Sasportis, age 21, and Corporal Ilan Sadon, age 21, were hitchhiking home for the weekend, standing by the side of the road in their military uniforms. A car pulled up, 3 Palestinians inside. One of them was disguised as an Orthodox Jew, wearing traditional religious clothing that made the soldiers feel safe. They accepted the ride. They were never seen alive again. The search lasted weeks. When their bodies were finally recovered, they had been mutilated. Shocked Israel, not just because of the brutality, but because of the planning. This wasn't random violence. This was organized, calculated, a new kind of threat. Hamas later claimed responsibility. And according to their own statements, the man who planned and executed the operation was Mahmoud al-Mabhouh, who, in a video recorded 2 weeks before his death and later broadcast on Al Jazeera, admitted his involvement, describing in detail how he had disguised himself as an Orthodox Jew to gain the soldiers' trust. For Israel, this wasn't just terrorism, it was personal. These were their sons, their brothers. And Mahmoud al-Mabhouh became a marked man. What Israeli intelligence didn't know at the time was that al-Mabhouh was about to become far more dangerous than a simple killer. He was about to become the bridge between Hamas and Iran, the man who would turn Hamas from a local resistance movement into a sophisticated military organization armed with advanced weaponry capable of striking deep into Israeli territory. By 2010, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh had risen to become chief of logistics and weapons procurement for Hamas's military wing, the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades. Operating primarily from Damascus, Syria, where he lived in exile, he had built smuggling networks that stretched across 3 continents. His job was simple, but critical: get Iranian weapons into Gaza. The weapons were sophisticated: anti-tank missiles capable of destroying Israeli armor, long-range rockets that could strike Tel Aviv,
guided missiles with precision targeting systems. These weren't crude homemade devices. These were military-grade weapon systems that could change the balance of power. The routes were ingenious. Weapons would leave Iran by ship, traveling to Sudan. From Sudan, they'd move overland through Egypt, through the vast, empty spaces of the Sinai Peninsula, until they reached the network of tunnels under the Gaza-Egypt border. Hundreds of tunnels, some large enough to drive vehicles through, all hidden beneath houses and businesses. Al-Mabhouh didn't just facilitate these shipments. According to journalists Yossi Melman and Dan Raviv, he had become the critical middleman, forging the secret alliance between Hamas and Iran's Quds Force, the elite special operations unit of Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Without him, Hamas couldn't have built the arsenal that made it such a formidable threat. Israeli intelligence had been tracking him for over 2 decades. They had tried to kill him before and failed. In one attempt, they had used a highly toxic agent placed on furniture in his hotel room in November 2009. He touched it, it entered his bloodstream, but the dose wasn't enough. He became ill, hospitalized himself in Damascus, and survived. He had earned a nickname among Israeli intelligence officers, the Fox. Cunning, paranoid, always moving, always suspicious. He rarely spent more than one night in the same location. He traveled under multiple identities, carrying as many as 5 different passports. He communicated only through trusted couriers, never by phone or email. He had survived this long because he understood that Israeli intelligence wanted him dead, and he took every precaution. But everyone makes mistakes. And on January 19, 2010, al-Mabhouh made a fatal one.
The exact moment Israeli intelligence learned of al-Mabhouh's travel plans remains classified, but multiple sources, including former Mossad officers, have indicated that his computer had been compromised months earlier. A Trojan horse virus, installed remotely, monitored his communications, read his emails, tracked his internet activity. On January 18, 2010, al-Mabhouh made an online booking. Emirates Flight 912, departing Damascus at 10:05 a.m. on January 19th, arriving Dubai at 3:15 p.m. He was traveling en route to Bangkok with a stopover in Dubai. He would be traveling alone. His bodyguards couldn't get seats on the same flight. The moment the booking appeared in the system, Israeli intelligence knew. They had less than 19 hours to plan and execute an assassination in a foreign country. What happened next reveals both the capabilities and the limitations of modern intelligence operations. The team that deployed to Dubai was likely from Kidon, an elite assassination unit operating under Mossad's Caesarea division. These are Mossad's ghosts, operators who spend entire careers in shadows, their identities protected even within Israeli intelligence. But there wasn't time for perfection. There wasn't time to create undetectable false identities. There wasn't time to manufacture pristine passports that would survive deep scrutiny. Instead, they used what they had: borrowed identities, cloned passports, real names of real people, many of them Israeli citizens with dual nationality living abroad. According to Dubai police records and passport investigations by multiple countries, 12 British passports, 6 Irish passports, 4 French passports, 1 German passport, and 3 Australian passports. 26 suspects in total. The passports weren't forgeries in the traditional sense. They were authentic documents, either fraudulently obtained or doctored copies of real passports belonging to real people. Many of those people were dual Israeli-British, Israeli-Irish, or Israeli-Australian citizens who had no idea their identities were being used. Paul John Keeley woke up on February 16, 2010 to find his face on international news as a suspected assassin. He lived in Jerusalem. He was a British Israeli citizen. He hadn't been in Dubai. He hadn't murdered anyone.
but someone who looked enough like him had entered Dubai using a passport with his name, traveled to the Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel, and participated in one of the most publicized assassinations in modern history. He was one of 6 British-Israeli dual nationals whose identities were stolen. All would later tell investigators they had no idea their passport information had been compromised. The operatives arrived separately throughout January 19th, flying from different European cities to avoid detection. They checked in to different hotels using different credit cards. They carried minimal luggage. They paid for everything in cash. They used disposable cell phones. According to Dubai police reconstruction, the first 2 suspects entered Dubai at approximately 8:30 a.m. using German and British passports under the names Michael Bodenheimer and James Clark. They were followed 30 minutes later by Gail Folliard and Kevin Daverin, both carrying Irish passports, arriving on a flight from Paris. The surveillance footage shows their tradecraft. They took separate taxis to the same hotel. They checked in at different times. They wore different clothing. Throughout the operation, they would change disguises repeatedly, switching wigs, glasses, and clothing in hotel bathrooms to avoid being tracked by any single description. What they didn't know was that Dubai had something most cities in 2010 didn't have: comprehensive CCTV coverage. Cameras in the airport, cameras in hotel lobbies, elevators, hallways, cameras in shopping centers and on street corners. Every movement was being recorded. The team didn't know which hotel al-Mabhouh would choose. Intelligence indicated he had stayed at 3 different luxury hotels during his previous visits to Dubai: the Al-Bustan Rotana, the Jumeirah Beach Hotel, the Burj Al Arab. They waited.
At 3:15 p.m., Emirates Flight 912 touched down at Dubai International Airport. Mahmoud al-Mabhouh walked through the terminal, pulling his black suitcase, completely unaware that he was walking into a trap that had been set hours before he even boarded his flight in Damascus. According to the Sunday Times, an agent on the ground in Damascus had tracked al-Mabhouh's departure, confirming the flight and transmitting that information to the team in Dubai. Now, the CCTV footage shows what happened next with remarkable clarity. 2 men in tennis outfits appear in frame. White shorts, tennis rackets, no cases. They position themselves near the baggage claim, watching, waiting. Al-Mabhouh collects his luggage, heads toward the taxi stand. The tennis players follow at a distance. Other operatives materialize from different positions in the terminal, creating a box around the target. One walks so close he actually bumps into al-Mabhouh near the baggage carousel, close enough to confirm his identity, close enough to touch him. Al-Mabhouh never notices. He's focused on getting to his hotel, making his meetings, and getting out of Dubai as quickly as possible. He takes a taxi to the Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel. The surveillance team follows in separate vehicles, maintaining visual contact, radioing ahead to the team members already positioned at the hotel. If there's one image that defines the entire Dubai operation, it's the tennis players. 2 men in white tennis outfits, carrying rackets without cases, standing in a luxury hotel lobby for hours. Their names, according to the passports they carried, were Peter Elvidge and Christopher Lockwood, both supposedly British citizens. In reality, Christopher Lockwood's identity had been stolen from an Israeli soldier killed in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Security footage shows them entering the Al-Bustan Rotana shortly after 3 p.m., shows them standing in the lobby, waiting, watching the elevators. At 3:25 p.m., al-Mabhouh checks in at the reception desk. The tennis players are clearly visible in frame, standing barely 10 feet away, conspicuously holding their uncovered rackets. As a hotel staff member escorts al-Mabhouh to his room, the tennis players quickly follow them into the elevator, desperate to learn his room number. The staff member actually glances back at them, noting their confused behavior as they seem to confer about who should follow the target. They stood in that lobby for nearly 4 hours. 4 hours holding tennis rackets, wearing tennis clothes, never playing tennis. Former Mossad officer Viktor Ostrovsky later called it amateurish, noting they didn't seem to know what they were doing. But despite the obvious mistakes, they accomplished their mission. They identified al-Mabhouh's room, 230, second floor, and they identified the room directly across the hall, 237. Within minutes, one of the operatives checked in to room 237. At approximately 4 p.m., al-Mabhouh left his hotel room. He went for a walk around Dubai, making phone calls, meeting contacts. Security cameras tracked him through the city, shopping centers, cafes, always moving. While he was gone, the operatives made their move. Security footage shows several suspects entering the hotel, dressed as hotel maintenance staff, complete with uniforms. They approach room 230. Using cloned electronic keycards, somehow obtained earlier, they enter the room. The locks on the doors were Vingcard LockLink brand, which can be accessed and reprogrammed directly at the hotel room door. Dubai police believe the electronic lock was reprogrammed during this entry, allowing the assassins to enter later without forcing the door. Inside the room, they worked quickly. They searched it. They examined the layout. They positioned themselves. They rehearsed. They planned the kill. One operative remained in room 237 across the hall, maintaining visual surveillance on the corridor. Others positioned themselves throughout the hotel, creating a security net that would alert them the moment al-Mabhouh returned. While the suspects used encrypted communication devices among themselves, Dubai police later discovered they had made numerous calls and sent SMS messages to 4 phone numbers in Austria. Intelligence analysts believe these were command and control numbers coordinating the operation from a safe distance. At 8:24 p.m., al-Mabhouh returned to the Al Bustan Rotana. Security cameras captured him entering the hotel, entering the elevator, walking down the corridor toward room 230. He had no idea what was waiting for him. What happened inside room 230 was reconstructed by Dubai police forensic investigators from autopsy results, crime scene analysis, and the timeline established by security cameras showing operatives entering and exiting the room. At 8:24 p.m., al-Mabhouh unlocked the door to room 230 and stepped inside. 4 men were waiting for him. He was grabbed immediately, restrained. One forensic theory suggests he was shocked with a taser to incapacitate him. What is certain is that he was injected in the thigh with succinylcholine, a fast-acting muscle relaxant used in medical procedures. The drug worked within seconds, paralyzing every muscle in his body. He couldn't move, couldn't fight back, couldn't scream for help. But succinylcholine doesn't sedate, it only paralyzes. Al-Mabhouh was fully conscious, fully aware of what was happening to him, unable to do anything to stop it. Then they suffocated him with a pillow. The autopsy revealed he had struggled despite the paralysis. There were signs of electric shocks on his legs, behind his ears, over his genitals, over his heart. Blood on the pillow indicated prolonged suffocation. The entire killing took less than 20 minutes. At 8:46 p.m., security cameras captured 4 men exiting room 230. They walked calmly down the hallway, entered the elevator, crossed the lobby, disappeared into the Dubai night. They had executed one of Israel's most wanted terrorists in the middle of a luxury hotel and walked out without anyone noticing. By 9 p.m., most of the assassination team had already checked out of their hotels. The disguises came off, the wigs were discarded, the fake beards removed. They changed clothes in bathroom stalls, leaving their surveillance outfits behind. They departed Dubai from different airports at different times, flying to different destinations: Frankfurt, Rome, Paris, Amsterdam. By midnight, the majority had left the United Arab Emirates. Within 24 hours, all 26 suspects had vanished. The operation, from a tactical perspective, was a complete success. The target was dead. All operatives escaped without arrest. No Israeli fingerprints were left at the scene that could definitively prove Israeli involvement. But they had left something behind that would prove far more damaging than any physical evidence. They had left their faces on hundreds of hours of security camera footage. January 20th, 2010, morning. A hotel maid knocked on the door of room 230. No answer. She knocked again. Silence. Hotel security was called. They opened the door and found Mahmoud al-Mabhouh lying on the bed, apparently dead from natural causes. Heart attack, perhaps. Stroke. He was 49 years old. Not impossible. But Dubai Police Chief Lieutenant General Dahi Khalfan Tamim ordered a full autopsy anyway. The results revealed everything. The injection marks in the thigh, succinylcholine in the bloodstream, signs of electric shocks, evidence of suffocation. This was murder, carefully planned, professionally executed. Tamim, a career detective who had risen through Dubai's police ranks and specialized in criminal investigation, began his most important case of his career. He started with a simple question: who had entered and exited Dubai around the time of al-Mabhouh's death? His investigators cross-referenced airport entry and exit records with hotel guest lists. They noticed a pattern: a group of European travelers who had arrived within hours of al-Mabhouh, stayed in hotels near the Al Bustan Rotana, and departed within 24 hours of his death. Then they began reviewing the surveillance footage.
February 15th, 2010, Dubai Police Headquarters. Lieutenant General Dahi Khalfan Tamim held a press conference that would change international espionage forever. Behind him, massive screens displayed security camera footage. The faces of 11 suspects, their passport photos, their movements through Dubai Airport, through hotel lobbies, through elevators and corridors. The footage was extraordinary. It showed the entire operation from multiple angles. The tennis players following al-Mabhouh, the operatives changing disguises in bathrooms, the woman in sunglasses smiling at a camera, the 4 assassins entering and exiting room 230. He displayed the 11 passports, British, Irish, French, German, all carried by people who looked nothing like the genuine passport holders. He explained the tradecraft, the disguises, the coordination, the meticulous planning, and he pointed out the mistakes, the tennis players standing for hours, the repeated disguise changes on camera. The use of real Israeli citizens' passport information created a direct link back to Israel. The footage went viral immediately. News organizations around the world broadcast the CCTV compilation. Millions watched on YouTube. Intelligence analysts studied every frame, taking notes, identifying techniques. It was unprecedented. Never before had the inner workings of a sophisticated intelligence operation been so thoroughly documented and publicly exposed. Over the next 2 weeks, Dubai police would expand the suspect list to 26 people, 12 using British passports, 6 using Irish passports, 4 using French passports, 3 using Australian passports, and 1 using a German passport. Their photographs were circulated to Interpol. Red notices were issued. They became the most wanted people in the world. The passport controversy created an international diplomatic crisis unlike anything Israel had faced in decades. Britain was furious. 6 of the passports belonged to British-Israeli dual nationals living in Israel. British Foreign Secretary David Miliband launched a formal investigation. British police flew to Israel to interview the genuine passport holders. On March 23, 2010, Miliband summoned Israeli ambassador Ron Prosor to the Foreign Office. Britain expelled an Israeli diplomat, changed travel advisories for British citizens visiting Israel. The traditionally close British-Israeli alliance was strained to breaking point. Ireland followed. Foreign Minister Michael Martin stated that Ireland had reached the inescapable conclusion that Israel was responsible, noting that Israel had not assisted in investigations and had not denied involvement. Ireland expelled an Israeli diplomat. Australia summoned the Israeli ambassador. Foreign Minister Stephen Smith declared that Australia was very gravely concerned and demanded full cooperation with the investigation. Australia expelled an Israeli diplomat. France opened its own investigation into the fraudulent use of 4 French passports. Germany issued a European arrest warrant for Uri Brodsky, a man suspected of illegally obtaining a German passport for one of the assassins. When Brodsky was arrested in Poland in June 2010, Germany demanded extradition. Israel paid a bail of 100,000 euros and immediately flew him to Tel Aviv. The European Union issued a formal condemnation stating the EU strongly condemns the fact that those involved in this action used fraudulent EU member states' passports and credit cards acquired through the theft of EU citizens' identities. Israel maintained its traditional policy, neither confirm nor deny. Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman dismissed the accusations, suggesting the press watches too many James Bond movies. When pressed about Israeli involvement, he told Israel Army Radio, "There is certainly no reason to think that the Mossad and not some other intelligence agency of another country operated there." Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu remained silent. The Israeli government issued no official statement confirming or denying that Mossad had executed the operation. But inside Israel, the reaction was more complex. Some celebrated. Former Mossad Deputy Director Ilan Mizrahi told reporters Mossad has been restored to its glory days. The message was clear. Israel could reach anyone, anywhere, even in the heart of a foreign capital. But others were deeply critical. Haaretz columnist Amir Oren called for Mossad Director Meir Dagan to be fired, calling the operation sloppy. The use of real Israeli citizens' passport information created a direct link back to Israel, exposing the operation in ways that previous assassinations had avoided. Right-wing politicians attacked Britain's decision to expel an Israeli diplomat. Knesset member Michael Ben-Ari called it anti-Semitism disguised as anti-Zionism. Arya Eldad stated, "Britain's behavior is hypocritical. Who are they to judge us in the war on terror?" But beneath the political rhetoric, there was acknowledgement that something had gone wrong. The operation had succeeded tactically, but failed strategically. The target was dead, but the exposure was catastrophic.
15 years later, fundamental questions about the Dubai operation remain unanswered. Why did the operatives make so many visible mistakes? The tennis players lingering for hours, the woman smiling at cameras, the repeated disguise changes on camera, the use of real Israeli citizens' identities. Some intelligence analysts believe these weren't mistakes at all. The operation was meant to send a message: we can kill our enemies anywhere, and everyone will know who did it, even if we never officially confirm it. The exposure was intentional, a demonstration of capability and resolve. Others believe the operation was rushed. With less than 19 hours to plan, the team didn't have time for perfect tradecraft. They needed bodies on the ground. They needed coverage. They needed redundancy. 26 operatives for one target seems excessive until you understand they didn't know where he would stay, how long he would stay, or whether he would be alone. The biggest question is, was it worth it? Al-Mabhouh was replaced within weeks. Hassan Nasrallah appointed a new logistics chief. Iranian weapons continued flowing into Gaza. New rockets were fired at Israel. The strategic impact was minimal, but the intelligence cost was enormous. The exposure of operatives' faces on international television, the burning of passport sources, the diplomatic crisis that strained relations with allied nations. Leaked diplomatic cables later revealed that Dubai had initially considered keeping the assassination secret, but ultimately decided to expose it to send their own message. Even the world's most sophisticated intelligence agencies can't operate here without consequences. The Dubai operation changed international espionage in ways that are still being felt today. It demonstrated that in an age of ubiquitous surveillance, traditional tradecraft has limitations. There are cameras everywhere, facial recognition software, biometric databases, digital footprints that can't be erased. Intelligence agencies around the world studied the Dubai footage, analyzing what worked and what didn't. It became a training tool for how to conduct and how not to conduct targeted killings in modern urban environments. For Dubai, it became a showcase of their security capabilities and a warning to foreign intelligence services: you cannot operate here without consequences. For the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, it was another chapter in an endless cycle of violence. Hamas vowed revenge. Israel remained vigilant. The war continued. And for the operatives who executed the operation, it meant living with the knowledge that their faces had been seen by millions, that they could never operate covertly again, that their careers in the field were over. Today, the Al Bustan Rotana Hotel continues operating. Room 230 has been remodeled. New guests stay there, unaware of what happened on a January night in 2010. Somewhere in Israel, former operatives live normal lives, their role in the operation a secret they'll carry to their graves. And somewhere in Gaza and Syria, new Hamas commanders continue the work their predecessor began, planning operations, smuggling weapons, preparing for the next conflict. Dubai Police Chief Dahi Khalfan Tamim requested arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Mossad Director Meir Dagan. The warrants will never be executed. They are symbolic gestures in a shadow war without an end. The 26 suspects remain on Interpol's most wanted list. None have ever been arrested. None have ever been tried. And Israel has never officially confirmed or denied that Mossad was behind the assassination. But the surveillance footage remains online, a permanent record of an operation that was supposed to be invisible. 20 minutes of violence in a luxury hotel room. 26 operatives captured on hundreds of cameras. One dead Hamas commander. And one international scandal that revealed more about modern espionage than any declassified document ever could. This was the Dubai operation, the assassination that changed everything.